The Mariners have extended their AL West lead to 6.5 games with yet another comeback win against the White Sox, but the biggest story around the club right now is the health of Bryan Woo. We'll discuss that and more coming up here on the Locked On Mariners podcast. Colby, hit it.
You are Locked On Mariners, your daily Seattle Mariners podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Ahoy, sailors. It is Wednesday, June 12th, 2024. This is Citing Gonzalez and Colby Patnode for the Locked On Mariners podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. On today's show, we're going to talk about the Mariners' 4-3 win last night. Cal Raleigh with yet another game-winning hit. We'll also discuss Bryan Woo getting scratched from his start last night and how the Mariners should proceed on that front. But before we do that, shout out to our title sponsor today, eBay Motors. From brakes to exhaust kits and beyond, eBay Motors has over 122 million parts to keep your ride or die alive. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to bring home that big win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay guaranteed fit. Only available to U.S. customers. And if you want to hear from me and Colby even more and help support the show, check out our Patreon. The link is in the description, and you can sign up for a free 7-day trial. So, last night, Bryan Woo was supposed to make his 7th start of the season, going up against his former Cal Poly teammate, Drew Thorpe, who made his major league debut last night. Instead, he got scratched shortly after we recorded our episode yesterday. Jonathan Diaz ended up making that start in the Mariners' 4-3 win. We'll talk a little bit about him later on in the show. But this is now, what, the 3rd, 4th, 5th? I've lost track at this point. It's been so many times that Woo has struggled to recover from his previous start or even just a previous inning. And that seems to be the case here yet again. He underwent an MRI yesterday. The results of that are not public yet at the time of this recording. But this is concerning. This is really, really concerning because, again, I've lost track of how many times this has flared up for Woo this season. So, Colby, how you feeling?
Yeah, it's certainly concerning. I don't think there's any way to downplay this. Again, the hope is that they just needed to skip him once and he can do this. He can pitch on Sunday. He can make his next scheduled start and all that. But it's tough to feel optimistic about that when this is, he didn't throw a bullpen between starts again. He just wasn't feeling great. And then yesterday he wasn't feeling great, or the night before he wasn't feeling great. And obviously, his first outing where they took him out after, 4, because, he was only throwing 89 because he had to sit for, 20 minutes in between innings. So it's painting a troublesome picture about a guy who is really struggling to bounce back after, not even super extended workloads either. He threw 85 pitches in his last start. And before that, he threw 66. Like, they've done a really good job of being extremely careful with him. So you just hope that this is, abundance of caution type of thing. But it's starting to paint a troubling picture of a guy who just probably at this stage is never going to be this year. I don't want to talk long term, but it's probably not going to be a guy that you can just pencil into your rotate or write and pen into the number 5 spot of your rotation, because you're going to have to short script him. There's going to be times where he can't make his next start, and you're just going to try and manage this, to a point where you're going to run into some issues. So I think, for the Mariners, their big advantage over pretty much every team in baseball is that their 1 through 5 starters are just better than your 1 through 5 starters. And that's, kind of what they're going to do to beat you. They're going to outpitch you in the rotation. And obviously their 1 through 4 is still better than most people's 1 through 4. But it is a ding. It is, a knock against what makes you a good team. If Woo can't consistently go out there every 5 days. And obviously for Woo, this is a big year for him. Not only is he pitching well, but this was supposed to be a year where, you kind of get him into that rotation and you kind of get him going every 5 days, and you start to build up the workload a little bit so that in a year or two, he could be the guy who throws, 180 innings. And we know that they really, pushed him hard last year, new career high in innings pitched and all of that. But this is a guy who has an injury history in the past. It's a guy right now who's struggling to bounce back even after 4 or 5 days. So at some point, the Mariners have to either make a long-term decision with Woo and maybe there's a surgery they're trying to put off. Maybe he just has to get it, or maybe there's, maybe it just he's just not going to be a guy who can go every 5 days this year. So either they have to go to a 6-man rotation or they have to bump him to the bullpen or something like that. So there's obviously concern here. Scott not downplaying it yesterday. He said, he's concerned anytime anybody goes to the MRI, but that's not downplaying it. We know the difference from Scott downplaying an injury and having legitimate concern about it. So, we'll see. We haven't gotten any updates today. That'll probably happen around 3:00 our time, West Coast time. But it's concerning. It is definitely concerning, and it might lead to the Mariners having yet another area they need to go out and try and fix at the trade deadline. And there's only so much you can do in one deadline. So it is a bit of a concern. Hopefully it's a short-term thing. Hopefully it's just, he's feeling actually pretty good today. But even if that's the case, if this guy can't go every 5 days with some consistency, you have to consider bumping him to the bullpen, or you have to consider going out and getting somebody who can go every 5 days and just kind of trying to figure it out, because you can't go, 3 days and be like, oh, I don't know if I'm going to be able to start this next game. And then you have to make another move and you have to make another move. It's not going to work if you continue to go in the cycle. So, we'll hope for the best, but you should probably expect the worst.
I'm really interested to see if they do go out and try to add another starter, what kind of waters they swim in for that starter, right? Because finding a number 5 shouldn't be that difficult, shouldn't cost you a ton in theory. Like, a couple of years ago, they traded Carter Benz for Tyler Anderson, right? And they got some pretty good production out of him. Is that the kind of arm that they look at? Or do you want someone better than Bryce Miller? Because in the playoffs, if you get deep into the playoffs, you only need 4 starters. Early on in the playoffs, you only need 3, right? So do you want someone better than Miller and then move Miller into the bullpen if you're able to make that deep run into the postseason? How are you feeling on that?
Yeah, it's tough to say, because right now, let's assume the worst for Woo, just in terms of this conversation, where Woo just isn't going to be able to make any starts for the rest of the year. Either that means he goes on the IL, or he has a surgery, or they just move him to the bullpen, whatever. We'll just assume the worst here. At that point, you have very definitive needs in your lineup, in your bullpen, and in your rotation. And so how you decide, and you can't go get like one guy from like, you can't go get the best hitter on the market, the best starting pitcher on the market, and the best reliever on the market. Like, I mean, you could in theory go do that, but it's just not likely going to happen. You're asking too much. So you kind of have to triage this, and you kind of have to think, where can I kind of skimp? And the problem with doing it in the starting rotation is that your number 6, or your new number 5 in this case, would be Emerson Hancock. And Hancock has his own injury issues to worry about, and his own workload limitations that you have to worry about. So to me, it's difficult to say, because I don't think that your odds of, winning this division are, greatly increased or stay the same if you're running Hancock out there every 5 days and then Diaz every once in a while. So I think you need that guy. But again, like, Jesus Luzardo is going to cost you something pretty good. Is somebody like a Tyler Anderson. I mean, not
actually him, but yeah.
Whoever this year's Tyler Anderson is that guy actually better than Emerson Hancock? Emerson Hancock looked like a number 5 to me, but he might be a little more durable. But are you going to give up a prospect for that? Because even though it might not be a great prospect, it's still a prospect. Like, it's still, legitimate ball of clay. So
sure, but we're in go time as well. Right.
But you're in go time, and you need at least one middle of the order bat, and you probably need a second bat to go with that. Somebody who hits 6, 7, 8, or 5, 6, 7, somewhere in that range.
Right.
So you need 2 bats. You probably need 2 bullpen arms, even if Santos and Evans are healthy. Now you could say, well, if you move Woo to the bullpen, then do you only need 1 bullpen arm? Okay, like, fine.
Sure.
But you still need a high leverage bullpen arm. And now I need a number 3 starter. Like, I don't know how you get all that unless you're going to get really creative and you're going to go get 2 of those things in one trade or something like that.
And that's possible, because I mean, like, you look at the White Sox, Luis Robert and Garrett Crochet potentially. You look at the Marlins, Jazz Chisholm and Jesus Luzardo. There's a couple other spots where you can double up potentially, but again, it just depends on how important is getting someone better than Bryce Miller. Because if it's not important at all, then just go out and you get your Tyler Anderson equivalent, right?
Sure. I mean, it's Rich Hill.
Right. Yeah.
It's
right.
It's Adrian Hauser. Like it's somebody like that. So
just someone that can eat some innings, that can give
Right.
you, a chance to win, most every fifth night.
Right. So I don't know how they're going to prioritize it. To me, just trying to triage this, I would think that you still prioritize the middle of the order bat number one, and then probably the high leverage bullpen arm number two. And then I might go starting pitcher over like the secondary bat, like the number 6 hitter, like the Mark Canha type, right? Like I would rather go get, the middle of the rotation guy. I would prioritize that over the number 6 hitter. But I would prioritize the number 6 hitter over the number 5 pitcher. Like, if that makes sense.
Right. So we'll see. Hopefully we get good news on Woo, but again, even if he is able to make starts, it's pretty unsustainable. All right, let's talk about yesterday's game. The Mariners win 4-3. They make another comeback against the White Sox. We'll go over that in just a moment, but first, a reminder, this episode of the Locked On Mariners podcast is brought to you by Tax Network USA and Prize Picks. Here on Locked On Mariners, we pride ourselves on getting you the latest news for your team, whether it's the offseason, the draft, spring training, or the playoffs. It's year-round. You know what else is year-round? Collection season. Just because tax season is over doesn't mean the IRS will stop coming after you for unfiled taxes. The IRS can garnish your wages, levy your bank accounts, and even seize your property. Don't let the IRS target you. Let the licensed professionals and tax experts at Tax Network USA go to bat for you. With over 14 years of experience and an A+ rating by the Better Business Bureau, Tax Network USA has saved their clients over $1 billion in tax debt. Whether you owe taxes, have complicated matters that require tax planning, or finally hit that parlay this season and need help correctly filing, call 1-800-549-1000. That's 1-800-549-1000 or visit tnusa.com/lockedon. See the link in this episode description. With Prize Picks, you could turn $10 into $1,000 in a single game watching your favorite sports this summer. You can make a Prize Picks lineup in as little as 60 seconds. All you have to do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 players' stat projections, and you're locked in. Prize Picks is America's #1 fantasy sports app with over 5 million active members. So get in on the daily action with your friends and become a part of the Prize Picks community today. Download the app today and use the promo code LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match up to $100. Again, that's promo code LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match up to $100. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy. And you're listening to the Locked On Mariners podcast. You can catch Game 3 between the White Sox and the M's tonight on the Mariners hometown broadcast with SiriusXM via the SXM app. All you have to do to find that is search the word Mariners. So the Mariners win 4-3 last night. Cal Raleigh with yet another game-winning hit, the 2-run double. Jonathan Diaz started that game, of course, with Woo getting scratched. Let's talk a little bit about him. What did you think about his night? 5 1/3 innings pitched, 9 hits allowed. A couple of home runs, 4 Ks, just the 1 walk, 3 earned runs in total. Yeah. He survived, I guess. Give you a chance to win.
Sure. Looked like a really good pitcher to have in AAA for emergency starts.
Yeah.
Yep. I mean, basically Tommy Malone. He was fine. He looked like a veteran out there, the game had a chance to get away from him in the second, bases loaded, nobody out. He managed to work around that, only giving up the 1 run, which was huge. It was an interesting mix from him last night. The slider is his best pitch, and somewhat ironically, or perhaps by design, it was the pitch he threw the least last night. So that was a little bit weird. He was very, you can kind of tell like what his plan was. He was trying to steal strikes early in the count. That's why we saw that big overhand looping curveball. Basically trying to Barry Zito it. for a couple innings, and it worked for the most part, except when they sat curveball on the first pitch and he left it in the middle of the plate, boom, it's gone. So that's who Diaz is, though. If he goes 5 or 6 and he gives up 3 or 4 or less, then he's done his job. So never broke 92 on the gun. He maxed out at 91.9 miles an hour. It's not anything. You're not like right, like, oh man, this might be a guy. And no, he's not that. Only 7 whiffs on 45 swings. But he did throw.
We're definitely spoiled, watching arguably the best rotation in baseball, because watching Jonathan Diaz last night, I'm like,
just look different.
What the hell is this? This is unnatural.
This looks like they called up a kid from 9th grade C squad to pitch in a varsity game. You're just like, ooh. Yeah, but he did throw 60 strikes on 82 pitches, so he definitely pounded the zone. He knows who he is. He knows like what his skill set is, and so he's a veteran. He's been around. He pitches to his skill set. I do think there's some potential value here out of the bullpen, though, because he does hide the ball pretty well. There's deception with his delivery, and he looked really good against the lefties. So like he can throw that slider and kind of expand the zone out against lefties. And then obviously he can drop in that curveball and the changeup against the righties. So I actually think that Diaz could help the Mariners in a more impactful way if they just put him in the bullpen and basically use him as the second lefty, who might be able to go a couple innings if you need to. Like, I do think there's actually major league value to Diaz.
Right.
But it's not as a starter. Like, he's not the answer to be the number 5 starter. Woo's going to miss significant time. You'd honestly rather have Hancock out there. So,
well, and also, by the way, on the bullpen front, they only have one lefty now in the bullpen because they DFA'd Kirby Snead yesterday. They also DFA'd Matt Bowman to make room for Bizzardo and Diaz. Now DeGus is out there, but yeah, Sauce is the only lefty right now. So if you're looking for another lefty, because it might not be Snead, we'll see on that front.
Right.
Diaz seems to be the ideal option there.
Right. One thing that they could do is they could send Diaz down because he's not going to be available for the next 4 days anyways. And then they could just put Woo on the IL.
Yeah.
And then that way they could just call Diaz up without having to wait the 10 days. And they could just put him in the bullpen. And then they could send DeGus down. When that number 5 turn of the rotation comes through again on Sunday, they could just send him down and call up Hancock, and Hancock can make that start. So
sure.
There's definitely a way to get Diaz back in the bullpen in 5 days when he'll be ready to pitch again. So we'll see if they want to keep him stretched out in AAA, but I do think that there's some value here in the bullpen because, again, he did throw some good changeup against righties. He does have a pretty good slider, and it's not easy to pick up, the ball if you're a lefty against Diaz. So I actually do think that there's some bullpen value here. But yeah, in terms of his start last night, he was fine. Like, he gave you exactly what you needed from him. Just go 5 innings, give us a chance to win the game. And that's what he did. So, kudos to Diaz.
And, Luis Robert goes 0 for 3, strikeout against Trent Thornton, clearly lowering his trade value. Good job, Mariners pitching staff. Now we only have to give up Ty Pete for him.
Yeah, that's how that works.
Exactly. Exactly. Any other thoughts on the game last night?
Trent Thornton had a good bounce back game. It's been kind of a rocky back and forth thing for him, but he only needed 11 pitches to get 5 outs. Got the big double play. I don't know if it's big when it's against Maldonado, but Maldonado had an RBI single, and we know how he is against the Mariners.
Of course he did. Yeah.
Yep. Like the worst hitter in baseball against the Mariners, he's Mookie Betts.
Didn't he literally enter the game last night like hitting 071 or 081, 090, whatever it was?
The worst hitter in baseball, the worst active hitter in baseball. I believe his teammate, Andrew Benintendi, is the only one with a lower WRC plus, but even Benintendi's on the IL right now. But yeah, against the Mariners, he is Mookie freaking Betts at the plate. Probably not a good idea to get into a 3-ball count against a guy hitting 071.
Wasn't Diaz 0-2 against him too? In that
I think he started, and then he threw like 3 straight balls and fouled off a couple pitches. But yeah, he was pretty good. Got to give credit to Bauman for creating a mess and then fixing it. He allows
the throw to second. I'm like, dude, what are you doing?
Run around third right after you take the lead back in the bottom of the 7th. It's Bauman in the 8th, and you're like, oh man, this is. But no, you could see why the Mariners like Bauman.
Yeah.
Threw a couple really nasty knuckle curves, and the fastball's 97 miles an hour. Just find some consistency, man. Just find some consistency in the zone. And you might have something here. So Bauman, though, he does get the 2 strikeouts with the runner on third and nobody out. And then Saucedo comes in, and I don't know what Mendick is swinging at because that pitch was 1.5 feet outside of the strike zone. That is a swing that is 100% like, I'm swinging at this pitch no matter where it is. And then he's like, oh, crud. And so whatever. It counts. Sauce gets the job done. And then, like you said, Stanek was...
He was Ryan
good
Stanek.
enough.
He was Ryan Stanek.
The best thing about Ryan Stanek is you don't know what you're going to get pitch to pitch. Forget outing to outing.
Yeah. It's not outing to outing.
Pitch
it's
to
a
pitch.
pitch
It's not
by
even hitter to
pitch
hitter.
basis. Well, no, because he'll like throw the worst splitter you've ever seen, and then he'll just blow 99 past someone the next pitch.
He'll dot up 99 on the upper outside corner.
Yeah.
And then he'll back it up.
And then
with
he'll
like
throw a
filthy
great
slider.
splitter after.
Yeah, and you're just like...
And then he'll
This
pipe a
is-
middle fastball. Like, it's just...
And then the
he
next
is the
hitter-
most terrifying pitcher to watch on this
and the
pitching
next
staff by
hitter,
far.
He'll bounce 3 splitters and then throw a fastball over everybody's head. And you're just like, what am I watching right now?
Yeah.
It is very Fernando Rodney-esque. So, but give him credit. He got the job done the last 2 nights in a row.
Yep.
Running a little long on time, so we'll probably skip the concern that Andres Munoz wasn't available 2 days after a 12-pitch performance. Ooh. So
I texted you this last night. I think that's a matter of, well, it's the White Sox. We don't need to push it with Andres. Because I truly believe, maybe I'm wrong on this, but I truly believe if this was the weekend and they're playing the Rangers and it's the same situation, Andres is in that game. Which is a problem in itself. But
yeah, because you could still you can give him 2 days off in a row.
Yeah.
Like you can give him Wednesday and Thursday off if you want to save him for Texas. So I'm very concerned about Munoz right now in his back, that he wasn't available in a 1-run game in the 9th inning after throwing just 12 pitches in the last week, pretty much. Like, yeah, I'm concerned.
Yeah. All right. So game 3 tonight, Bryce Miller on the mound. Obviously, the last time he started a game, it did not go particularly well. We'll talk about if he can bounce back from that disaster in just a moment. But first, a reminder, this episode of the Locked On Mariners podcast is once again brought to you by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. What brings home the winning trophy is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. From superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. And with over 122 million parts to choose from, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. With eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into an MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Again, that is ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. Before we get back into the show, I want to tell you about an upcoming event this Sunday at T-Mobile Park to support a great cause. The Washington State Coalition Against Domestic Violence is partnering with the Mariners for the 28th year to host a Refuse to Abuse Game Day, raising awareness around efforts to prevent domestic violence and promote healthy, respectful relationships. Purchase a ticket to join 1,000 Mariners fans in the Special Reserve Game Day section this Sunday against the Rangers. Tickets cost $35, with $18 of that going to the Washington State Coalition Against Domestic Violence. And not only do you get to watch the game, you also get a Mariners-themed Refuse to Abuse Dry Fit t-shirt. For more information and the link to purchase your tickets on the Mariners website, please check out the description of this episode. And you're listening to the Locked On Mariners podcast. Once again, you can catch Game 3 between the M's and the White Sox tonight on the Mariners hometown broadcast with SiriusXM via the SXM app. All you have to do to find that is search the word Mariners. So, Bryce Miller coming off of a disastrous outing in Kansas City. Just a disastrous game as a whole for the Mariners on last Friday. Can you bounce back tonight, Colby?
Mm-hmm. I'd like to think so, but then again, in his last start, he was spotted an 8-0 lead and blew it. So, I don't know. Now, are the White Sox as good as the Royals?
particularly the Kauffman
No.
Stadium Royals.
Yeah, I'm
No
gonna
one
say
is.
no. Right. So, yeah, it's for Bryce. You hope it's a one-off, but he's a young guy, so you never really know what you're going to get from him. But again, because it's the White Sox, like this matchup favors just about every pitcher, unless you're a 4A, Jonathan Diaz type, which Miller certainly is not. So it'll be interesting to see what the pitch mix looks like tonight. A lot of righties in this lineup. So we're probably going to see a lot of sliders and sweepers. But obviously, there's a couple lefties in here that could hurt you, namely Gavin Sheets. So the splitter is going to have to come into play as well. But as it always seems to go with Bryce Miller, it's going to come down to the fastball. Is he on the corners or is he in the middle of the plate? If he's in the middle of the plate, he's screwed. If he's on the corners, the White Sox are screwed. And it's really that's all there is to it. Like the Mariners pitching staff is incredibly easy to break down because pretty much all of them are like, oh yeah, if they have their good stuff and if they're not near the middle of the plate and they have their good stuff, you're screwed. If they're in the middle of the plate and they have the good stuff, you got a chance to score 3 or 4. If they don't have their good stuff and they're in the middle of the plate, you're getting boat raced because this bullpen ain't stopping anybody. So, yeah, I think Miller again tonight, sliders against Robert, splitters against Gavin Sheets, and then fastballs against everybody else. Those will be the big pitches. And you stay out of the middle of the plate. Again, we talked about this on, what was it, Monday? So I guess Tuesday's episode. Gilbert with the poor process or execution, whichever one it was, on Robert that really put that game in doubt. Just if that guy has an opportunity to beat you and first base is open, just go after the guy behind him. Like this is a one-man threatening lineup.
Andrew Vaughn's had a pretty good series, and he's been pretty hot lately. Paul DeYoung's also been really hot over the last couple of weeks.
Cool. They have 2 league average bats in Luis Robert.
Yeah.
Neat. Not that concerning. So, and by the way, even if those guys were, having spectacular years, and they're not, and DeYoung's not.
No, you still don't. You still don't want Robert to beat you, right? You'd rather take your chances against Andrew Vaughn, against Gavin Sheets, against Paul DeYoung. Absolutely.
Right. So, be careful when you pitch to Robert. Be aggressive when you pitch to everyone else. And obviously you don't, pitch around Robert with nobody on base in the first inning or whatever. But you just have to be smart about it. Go and attack everybody else in this lineup. But yeah, I think it's going to be the breaking ball for Robert, the splitter for Sheets in particular, and then the fastball for everybody else. Be on the corners, work all 4 quadrants with that fastball, and you're going to be fine. You're going to give your team a good shot to win. And then, the offense, who knows? We roll those dice every night and we see what happens. But yeah, it's
typically once they get into the bullpen, they're pretty good. I need to look up what their numbers are against relievers this year compared to starters. All right. That's going to do it for our show. But before we get out of here, a reminder that Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. And now it's also available on Amazon Fire TV and the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today now available on the free Fire TV channels app. Thank you so much for joining us here on the Locked On Mariners podcast. For Colby Patnode, I'm Ty Gonzalez. Be sure to give us a follow on Twitter at LO_Mariners. You can follow me at Ty Gonzalez and Colby at CPAT11. That's CPAT11. You can also find all that stuff in the description of this episode. Have yourself a beautiful baseball day, and we'll see you next time. Peace.